Well, we are together again, and I thank you again for being a part of this very important journey toward a life that really matters. This has been the week of the Hope Story, I hope, for you, as you've had an opportunity to understand what your hope story is, the power of that hope story, and maybe even had a chance to tell it to someone who desperately needs to hear it. You've got your whole life to tell this hope story, and I hope you will many times over and over, and pray that your hope story will open the door, might be the answer to the prayer, Lord, open the door, for you to be able to tell His love story. Make it part of your hope story. Isn't it something to realize that your whole life has been preparing you, positioning you to be a rescuer of people you care about? You've been divinely positioned, remember? Placed by God in a certain place among certain lives because He thought you would be the best one to tell them about what His Son did on the cross. You are biographically credentialed to represent Jesus Christ. Everything that's happened to you in your life. The good stuff, the bad stuff, your background, how you grew up, what you've been through medically, what you've been through maritally, what you've been through parentally, relationally, all of the things that have happened in your life. You say, well, some of it hasn't been very good. I have some pain in my past. God's so amazing, He can recycle that into what I call crud-entials. It's kind of the cruddiest stuff that happened to us in our life. God takes that and makes it a bridge into someone else's life who's going through a very similar pain, a very similar valley. And suddenly, some of the worst things that ever happened to you become your credentials. People will listen to you because of what you've been through. Divinely positioned, biographically credentialed. Just think who you are. Just think of how God has trusted you and prepared you so that you can make the greatest possible difference with the rest of your life. Now we know that God uses the word rescue and the imagery of rescuing a lot to describe our responsibility and our privilege to get the good news of Jesus to people. Jesus used another example. He called it harvest. He said the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Jesus said this in John chapter 4. One sows and another waters. And then He said to the disciples, I sent you to harvest. So He talks about sowing and watering and harvesting. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So here are these different places we find people in relation to Jesus when we begin to tell our hope story and His love story to them. Some know nothing about Him. And for some people, you will sow in their life the first information they have about Jesus and the first chance they've ever had to see in human flesh the difference Jesus makes. And then for some people, they've got some of this. They've heard a little, and they need to be watered. And what does it mean to water that? Well, it may be someone who needs more information about Jesus. They only got a seed before, and you're going to give them a lot more information. It may be your hope story will help grow that seed that was planted somewhere else in their life. It may be that you'll be able to clear up some misconceptions they have. That seed that was originally planted, along the way they've gotten some wrong ideas about Jesus. But what you hope for, what you pray for, is that you will be able to be the harvester. Our job is to bring each person in our life that we know who doesn't know Jesus at least one step closer to Jesus than they were when they met us. And hopefully to take them as far as we possibly can right into beginning a relationship with Him. Sometimes people use an excuse. They say, well, I guess I'm just sowing, I'm just watering. In fact, God has many people ready. When Jesus said the harvest is plentiful, when I ask farmers about what the word harvest means, they'll tell me, well, it means ready. It's ready. Jesus said the ready is plentiful. I got lots of lost people ready for me. Maybe we'll be there to sow. Maybe we'll be there to water. But let's hope and pray and act as if we are there to bring them home, because we don't know if they'll have another opportunity. You say, well, Ron, when I get to the end of sharing life's most important relationship, this is the hard part. That's when I feel like I got to call a professional God salesman. I got to call my pastor. I got to help. I don't know what to do at that point. I just saw on the news the other night a story of a convenience store clerk who had a lady come in very pregnant. And the 911 call came in from him saying, I think we're about to have a baby here. Turns out this woman has only had 2-hour labors for her previous 2 children. And the lady from 911 says, be ready to catch. Well, before she could say it, the baby came. Well, the baby's okay. But you know what? He couldn't wait for an obstetrician to come. It's good to know how to deliver the baby when the baby's ready to come. And that is up to the person very often who already was there sowing the seed, watering, and harvesting. By the way, sometimes all 3 of those things happen in one conversation. That the person is sown with the gospel, you water it with some information, and they are ready. Here's how you can do that. You bring up Jesus. First of all, that's how you can tell if someone's been sown or watered. See what the reaction is. Talk about their spiritual background. What kind of spiritual background do you have? One thing I found helps locate a person spiritually is when I start to talk about the spiritual hole I had in my heart. And so all of us know how that feels, to have that emptiness, that hole, because we wonder what's supposed to go there, and nothing ever seems to fulfill us. And ask them if they've ever felt that. You'll begin to get some idea of where they're at. But you get to that moment now where they may be ready. Here's how you find out. Here's how you close on that relationship with Jesus Christ becoming real to them. First of all, you ask the question, would you like to have this relationship with God through Jesus Christ? Would you like to begin your relationship with Jesus Christ? If they say yes, you're ready to proceed. If they say no, find out the reasons why. It may just take some clarification. Then you say, well, what do you think it would take to begin this relationship with him? And that's where you can see how clearly you've communicated. And if they understand, it's not about being better, going to church more, being a good boy or girl. If they understand, it's grabbing Jesus as their rescuer, as if he was their only hope. And so you want to make sure they understand how to begin that relationship. And then finally, when do you think it'd be a good time to begin that relationship with God? What about right now? Why would you have one more day without him? You know what days without him are like. Why not begin a relationship with him this very day? Do you want to begin this relationship with Jesus? How do you think that would get started according to what we've looked at in the Bible? And when do you think it'd be a good time to begin it? How about now? We're going to explore a little more in the next few minutes about sowing, about watering, and above all, about harvesting and bringing somebody home to Jesus, where their heart belongs, the home they've been looking for their whole life. And I'll see you with an important assignment on the other side. Well, we've had a room full of ambassadors and a room full of rescuers. Now we have a room full of obstetricians, knowing how to deliver a baby into God's family, as Jesus said, being born again. Born the first time into your human family, born this time into God's family forever. And won't it be wonderful if you are his attending physician, or his midwife, as it were, to be the one to deliver this person into his family? You know, you don't need to feel like you failed if somebody doesn't make a commitment to Christ. Remember, it's up to the Holy Spirit to do the persuading. The Comforter, when he has come, he will persuade the world, Jesus said. You're just God's glove. Remember that. You have failed not if they don't come to Christ. You have failed if you don't give them the chance. Your job is to present. It is God's job to persuade. And this may take a period of months, years. It can take a long time for a heart to open to the Lord Jesus. It may mean that they have to hit a wall, come to a crisis moment in their life. And at that moment, they will think about where they've heard about hope, where they've heard about answers. And I pray they will look back to their time with you as the time that pointed them in the direction of Jesus Christ, the man who loved them enough to die for them, and is powerful enough to walk out of his grave. You were the voice of God to sow that seed, water that seed, and bring it to the point of harvest, perhaps. During this next week, I want you to think about this assignment and write it down and come prepared to talk about it next week. First of all, who do you think of in your life, at least one person that you wish you had told about Jesus, and you didn't, and now you can't? And why didn't you? Not to look back and create shame and guilt, but to begin to analyze what's kept us from telling people in the past. And I know when I look back and think about the people I didn't tell, it's powerful motivation to tell the people I still can. The second thing is this. Did you know a Christian who never told you, and you went some time before you came to Christ without knowing what he could do? I've had people say, I wish I didn't have to wait till I was 52 to find this out. I could have had my whole life with Christ. Were there Christians you knew who never told you? Think about that and write down some of your experiences with the Christians you wish had told you, so maybe you could have begun real life sooner. It's good to think back on those experiences. They shed a lot of light on what we can do to have a more powerful future and how we can make a greater difference. I saw an interview I can't forget. It was on the second anniversary of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center. They were interviewing a lady who was in a brokerage firm high up on the second tower. And she got out. But she teared up as she said this. There was somebody I worked with there. I was very close to. And I only wish I had asked him to go with me. I can never forget the fact that I didn't. Be an awful thing to get to the gates of heaven and look back at someone you were with so many times. Somebody you talked to about everything except Jesus. And say, I only wish I'd asked him or asked her to go with me. I can't forget that I didn't. Hey, there's still time. They're still here. There's still time for the rescue. I hope you have a very powerful week as God's ambassador. And I'm looking forward to next week with you.